Well, it's our weekly visit with the SLU Billikens head coach, Travis Ford, fresh off of win number 400 in his outstanding career. And Coach, let's start with the win, overtime over UMass. Tell me about that win and just how tough it was down the stretch and what you were able to do going into the overtime frame.
Yeah, it was a grind throughout the whole game. I didn't think we played particularly well. I didn't think ever we were in a rhythm. I didn't think we ever went on a great run. Beginning of the second half, we had a little bit of a spurt against their press, but it was just a back and forth game most of the night. And the difference for us was we finally played under 3.5 minutes in overtime. We probably played our best basketball, and I guess that's the right time to do it if you're going to do it. We made a lot of plays defensively. We made a lot of plays offensively. And that was really the difference in the game for us. In overtime with 3.5, we had a couple of steals, a couple of and ones, a three, and just really played well in overtime with 3.5 minutes to go.
What does 400 wins mean to Travis Ford?
Well, be honest, I didn't even realize. I had no idea until after the game. They were passing out the 400 little signs, and somebody asked me if I wanted the game ball, and I said, for what? And they said, it's for 400th win. That's when it triggered. But then later in the night, it really did. I had an opportunity to kind of sit back and kind of think about it. And the thing that pops in your mind the most, 100% of all the people that I've been fortunate enough through all my jobs. This is my fifth university, fifth coaching position I've taken over as a head coach. All the people I've had the honor to work with, to coach, and I'm just not talking about great players and coaches that help you get 400, but just the relationships you build in 23, 24 years of coaching. That's kind of what I reflected on is all the relationships, not necessarily the wins, but the relationships at all the different stops that I've been able to make, and I still have. There were people at the game from UMass the other night that I'd become very close to while I was the head coach at UMass who made the trip in. So a lot of the relationships have never ended from Campbellsville University, Eastern Kentucky University, UMass, Oklahoma State University, and then now here at St. Louis University. I'll have friends pretty much at every game that relationships I developed at maybe one of the other coaching positions I've had. So that means more to me than anything. That's kind of what I reflected on mostly.
When you have a milestone like that, I'm curious, do you hear from a lot of the other coaches around the country? Were there folks that you heard from that you hadn't heard from in years? Did anybody reach out to you in that regard?
Yeah, you get quite a few texts, and the most really, of some from coaches you haven't heard from in a while that will text, but the most meaning ones are from all the former players.
Yeah.
Starting at Campbellsville, I had several from Eastern Kentucky University, from UMass, Oklahoma State, several, and some of the former coaches that have been my assistant coaches. Many of those reached out, and they all had a hand in it, and that's what I've texted back. There's a lot of people that had a hand in to get 400 wins, and hopefully there's a few more to go. But, how many it takes to do that, and a lot of those people had a lot to do with it.
This may be a tough question to answer on the spot, but you've got 400 wins. You've been to the NCAA tournament. You've had milestones throughout the year and throughout the years. I'm curious if there's one win that stands out and that's really meaningful for Travis Ford more so than maybe some of the others. Is there any one game or moment or win that stands out for you?
Oh, goodness. There's a lot, and I'll kind of maybe go through each job. At Campbellsville University, we developed a real rivalry with Georgetown College. When I took over Campbellsville, Georgetown was the elite in NAIA. They were number one pretty much every year. Took over a fairly difficult situation in Campbellsville. And we were able to beat Georgetown when they were number one in the country, I think 2 to 3 times, one time at third place, which was a very memorable win while I was at Campbellsville. Eastern Kentucky, a very memorable win would be when we made the NCAA tournament. We beat Austin Peay in the finals in Nashville and really turned around a program in 5 years that had really struggled for about 25 years. And it just to be, we took our struggles the first 2 to 3 years, really struggled to get it going. And to be able to win and go to the NCAA tournament is a game I'll never forget. Probably the first huge moment in my coaching career. Then you go on to UMass, and, we beat UMass. We're the only team ever, my last year at UMass, the only team ever to beat Syracuse twice in the same year in the Carrier Dome. The second win got us to the Final Four of the postseason NIT in a huge, huge victory. And we go on to beat Florida, who was the reigning national champion.
Right.
Florida had won the national championship the year before. We beat them in Madison Square Garden and make it to the finals, and we played Ohio State, who was runner-up national, who lost to Florida the year before in the national final game. They ended up beating us. But that was memorable, the Syracuse game, getting to the Final Four for the NIT, beating Syracuse for the second time in that season. Oklahoma State going to Allen Fogg Fieldhouse when Kansas was number 2 in America. It's tough to win at Kansas, to say the least. Very memorable win there. And then obviously here last year, the St. Bonaventure game in the finals ranks up there with any of them for as far as winning 4 games in 4 days. So it's hard to narrow it down, as you said. It's very difficult, but fortunate enough to have some good moments throughout the last 23, 24 years.
When you look at this SLU team, and Hassan French has 19 on Sunday, and Jordan Goodwin, he chips in with 16. You took over the program, you brought those kids in, and now you have such a highly competitive program and a team that's going to the NCAA tournament a year ago. You might do it again this year. Who knows what happens in conference play. For fans, they look at the points, they look at the rebounds. Tell me about the intangibles of those two kids and what they've meant to your program.
Well, they've meant a lot because they came to St. Louis University, came here when kind of really part of the first true recruiting class. 2 young men, really, I dedicated myself to recruit throughout the summer. Lived with both of them every single game they played in July. They were my priority. They were my emphasis. And usually throughout the summer, you're recruiting 10, 11, 12, 15 kids. I recruited 2. And I knew what they could mean to our program. And they took a little bit of a chance because SLU had been down for a couple of years. And now, no different than what I told the media the other night after the game, we have 2 guys in our locker room that give us a chance to win every game. I don't care who we're playing. I'm not just talking about in the A-10. Michigan State, Duke, Carolina, Kentucky, guys that give us a chance to beat anybody. And that's the level that they're playing at right now. We get all the other players playing and competing at that high level, then I think we have a chance to be pretty good. Now, I don't think we've done that the last couple of games to the level we need to. But when you've got Hassan French and Jordan Goodwin on your team, they give you a chance every single night.
There's no question about it. Now, you got to switch gears here and gear it back up for tomorrow night. Game will be seen on Fox Sports Midwest. There's tickets available at Chaifetz Arena. George Washington coming to St. Louis. What can you tell us about them?
Well, George Washington has a new coach, a lot of new players, a few returners. They are going to shoot a lot of threes. Very aggressive defensively, very aggressive. They also run a lot of plays. I tell you want to watch a very good executing offensive team. George Washington really runs as many plays as I've ever seen in different actions. But they've got a really good, crafty point guard who can score in a variety of ways. They got a young man inside, Toros, 2 years ago, had 14 points and 16 rebounds on us 2 years ago, so he's obviously a force. But a team that's been in every game that they've played, got good talent. They've got a good team. They're just still kind of figuring out how to coach a little bit, but they've been in every single game that they've played. They took St. Bonaventure to the wire 2 nights ago, and St. Bonaventure, I think, was picked preseason 4th in our league. So that kind of gives you an idea that the level that they're competing at right now. But it should be a very, very good basketball game.
So, Coach, you had UMass on Sunday. You've got George Washington tomorrow. Now you're in the throes of the conference season. What is that like from the player's perspective and the coaching perspective of what you try to do daily to keep guys fresh, to keep them healthy? You got a bunch of games now that are kind of bunched together. How does that work from a coaching perspective and trying to get your team prepared day in and day out?
Well, it's a great question because that's really what we're dealing with right now a lot is, again, I think we were talking about, I think they even did it to us last year. We've started our league starting from our first game. We've got a game every third day. That means
That's right.
we have 2 days in between. And
Right.
I've never seen that. I went back and looked at a few from previous years. It is a grind, and because two things. The day after a game, you can't really do a whole lot, especially after an overtime game. You've had some guys play over 40 minutes, but pretty much after any game, you've got to really recoup. You study the film with your team, and you may do something very, very light, and that's the day after. And then obviously the day before the game, you don't want to wear your team out, and that's the mode we're in right now. It's hard to get better in practice. It's very difficult right now to get better. What you have to do is be mentally sharp, really mentally sharp. Guys have got to get a grasp of things we're doing wrong and things that we got to get better. They have to understand it through film. They have to understand it through kind of walking through it in practice and going through it without being able to drill it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. You just don't have that ability in these first 4 games that we're playing. Yesterday, to give you an example after the game, after our UMass game yesterday, we just watched film. That's all we did.
Mm-hmm.
We shot some free throws. We went and we shot free throws. We worked on free throws, and that was it. We did nothing else as far as on the court. And for a coach like myself who loves practice, who totally believes, and that's where you get better, it's a challenge. It really is. It's a challenge, and especially when I don't think we're playing that well right now. After Christmas, the 3 games we've played, we're 2-1 with the 1 loss at Duquesne. I don't think we've played very well in any of the 3 games. So I would love some practice time, but it is what it is. We've got to get through this grind.
Final question for you, Coach. And every coach in any sport, and I love doing these interviews with you because I'm a little off the wall and I can ask you off the wall questions. So that's the beauty of this, Coach.
I love it.
I did a game over the weekend, and I was talking to their staff, and they talked about putting chips in the shoes, computer chips in the shoes of the kids to study the analytics of steps, quickness, shot selection, all those different things, down to the inch of where they're at on the floor. Are you into that at all? Is that something now that you see coming into college basketball, but specifically for Travis Ford and SLU, are you able to do some of the analytics of college basketball in your practices and what you do in terms of evaluating your team?
We do, and then we have the same thing you're talking about. We have chips on our players' shoes. We use it mostly for practices, and what it does, it more or less charts their shots individually. It charts where they're taking them from, how many they make, percentages instantly. We can get it all on our iPad or a phone. It does chart turnovers, rebounds. It's amazing how it does it. And some teams are using it in games, and even the fans can track it.
That's right.
They have the app.
That's right.
And which I think is really cool and interesting, and I think you'll see more and more of that. But I am into it. But I'm into it really more for preseason practices and in the summertime. It's good for players to be able to track it individually on their own, things like that. There's a lot of teams that use some technology. They put it in their players' jerseys somehow that tracks the calories, how many steps, how many miles, how their heart rate, to give an idea if they're playing hard. Now, I don't get into all that necessarily, but there's so much technology and analytics going on within our game right now. It's really hard to keep up.
Well, it's just like when you're playing for Coach Stewart and Coach Pitino. I mean, of course they had computer chips, right?
Of course, yeah.
Hey, Coach, great to
Yeah.
visit with you. Thank you so much. Congratulations on win number 400, and we'll see you tomorrow at Chaffetz Arena with George Washington coming to town. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Enjoyed it.
You got it.